to start off with academics because I think that's one of the most important things you're probably thinking about as you're considering where you'd like to go to college. So at UChicago, we do academics a little bit differently in some ways than most other places. So one way in which we're a little bit different is that we're on a quarter system rather than a semester system. So we have classes during fall, winter, and spring quarter. Even though I was an English major when I was at UChicago, I do know what quarter means for. We do have a summer quarter also, but it's similar to other schools in that most people are not taking classes during the summer. They're doing internships and other things like that, and I can talk a little bit more about stuff like that in a little bit here. But the really great thing about the quarter system is that it just allows you to take a little bit more classes than you might otherwise be able to in a semester system. When I was in high school, I was taking about 7 or 8 classes per quarter. Per semester. But at UChicago, what's considered full-time student is 3 or 4 classes per quarter. So then that would sound, like between 2 quarters, that would only be, 6 to 8 classes. But then you add that third quarter in, and you can get anywhere from 9 to 12 classes. So I think it's really advantageous in a couple ways because one, like I said, you do have the opportunity to take more things, but also because you have fewer classes, in one particular quarter, you can really go in depth, really dive deeply into what you're learning about, which I really enjoyed when I was a student. So that's why I really like the quarter system at UChicago. But in order to graduate from UChicago, you need 42 credits. So basically, one class equals 1 credit. And if you divide all of those credits up among the whole time you'll be at UChicago, which, is typically going to be about 12 quarters. So 3 quarters a year for 4 years, 12 quarters. If you divide that up, like I said, you're only taking those 3 or 4 classes per quarter, which is really great. Going back, though, to those 42 credits, those are divided up into kind of 3 distinct blocks or types of classes, 3 main umbrellas that our different classes fall under. About a third of them will go towards our core curriculum, and I'll explain what that is in a second. About a third will go towards your major, and then about a third will go toward electives. Before I delve into what each of those types of classes entails a little bit more, I just want to mention you don't have to take these classes in this order. You can kind of take them in whatever order makes the most sense for you. So you might take 4 core classes a quarter. You might take 2 core classes, 1 major class, and 1 elective. You can really mix and match however you want, but I'll just talk about them in this order for now. So to start off, oh, and by the way, this is the outside of the building that my background is, just so if you're wondering what it looks like from the outside, now you know. But to get started with the first third of those 42 credits, those will go toward what's called our core curriculum. So if you've already kind of looked into Chicago at all, I'd be willing to bet a good amount of money that you've probably seen the core pop up at some point during your research. We are a liberal arts school at UChicago, which just means that we want our students to be really well-rounded in a whole variety of different subject areas. So that's not going to be the case at every school. Some places will want you to focus a lot more, on your major and kind of related things. One is not better than the other. It's just about figuring out what the best fit is for you personally. But at UChicago, we have our students take classes in 8 different key subject areas. So that includes humanities, arts, civilizations, which is kind of like history or social studies, social sciences, physical sciences, biological sciences, math, and foreign language. So everybody takes classes in those areas. The great thing about the core, though, is that there is a lot of flexibility within each of those areas. So there's not just one humanities class or one social science class that people can take. There is a whole variety to choose from within each of those areas. So as an example, for our humanities requirement, and humanities is going to be pretty similar to what you're probably accustomed to in something like an English class. One class that we offer, the one that I took when I was at UChicago, is called Human Being and Citizen. So in that class, you're reading books like the Iliad or Dante's Inferno. A lot of people, though, take a different class called Media Aesthetics. In that class, you're not just reading books, but you're also watching movies, listening to music, and writing papers about that. So I know, for example, one year, one section of that class had to write a paper about the music of Pink Floyd. So Pink Floyd's music and then Iliad by Homer are very different. And so I think that's just a really good example of, the variety that the core has. And like I said, that will extend to all different areas of the core so that you do have different options of what you can take, and you can really kind of tailor it to your own specific interests, which is really awesome. But to move on from there, next third of those 42 credits will go towards your major. So we have over 50 different majors and over 40 different minors at UChicago. So chances are you'll be able to find something that interests you. Up on this slide, we have a few of our more popular majors up. Probably our most second popular major is going to be biology. We do have a lot of students who are interested in that, both to, kind of as a stepping stone to go on to medical school later on, and then also just go into research and other things like that. And then probably our most popular major is economics, because a whole school of economic thought did come out of UChicago. So a lot of people, even if they're not super interested in economics, will take classes in economics, which brings me to the last third of those 42 credits, which is electives. So something that I think is helpful to know about UChicago, not only in terms of understanding how electives work, but also in terms of applying. And just as a reminder, I will get to the whole application process a little bit later on. But one thing that I do think is helpful to know is that we are not divided up into separate schools like some other places are. So it's another way in which we're a little bit different than some other places. We're just one undergraduate college. So we don't have a school of the humanities that's separate from the school of the social sciences, that's separate from the school of mathematics or anything like that. We do have different departments, but everything is just under one undergraduate college. So what that means for electives is that you can take classes in whatever area that you want. You are not limited. You could be a astrophysics major who really wants to take a music class. You could be a creative writing major who really wants to take a biology class to do some research, maybe for a short story you're writing or something like that. And so we really want people to be able to explore outside of whatever classes they're taking. And in addition to that, one thing that a lot of students do with electives, it's something that I did, is they use those credits in a more focused way to pick up a minor, double major, triple major. I've heard that it's possible to quadruple major, but I compare quadruple majors to unicorns in the fact that I have never actually met a quadruple major. But the electives are really awesome if you do have more than one interest. I double majored in Spanish as well. And it was really nice because I didn't have to take extra classes or take classes during the summer or anything like that to pick up that additional major. So that was really awesome for me. So that's kind of the basic overview of all of the different types of classes that you can take. And I've kind of alluded to this a little bit already, but I think there are a few different ways in which this is really beneficial for students. So one way in which it's really helpful, and I'll just kind of give you 3 quick reasons. One way in which it's really helpful is if you don't really know what you want to do yet when you come into college, which is really common. We get a lot of people applying and saying that they're undecided about what they want to do. You have a lot of options to explore. So the core is really great for exploring. Electives are really great for exploring. So you can kind of try things out and see if they fit, if you like them. And so that's really awesome. Also, if you come in thinking you know exactly what you want to do, but you end up changing your mind, it's also really easy to switch majors. So I had a friend, for example, she came in thinking she wanted to major in physics. She realized she liked the math aspect of physics a lot more, so she decided to change to math. So some of her classes that she had taken did count for the math major, but there were some physics classes that she had taken that didn't. But the cool thing was she was able to count those as electives, and she was able to graduate on time with all the rest of us without any problems or anything like that. So that was really great for her. And then the last thing that I'll mention is going to be our study abroad programs. So the way we have things set up makes it really easy to study abroad. Over about half of our students end up studying abroad at some point during their time. And so one way in which it's really popular to study abroad is to go abroad for a quarter and to fulfill your civilizations requirement. So remember when I was talking about the core earlier, I mentioned our civilizations requirement, which is kind of like history. Typically, you need to take a class for 2 or 3 quarters to fulfill that requirement, but if you go abroad, it's condensed to just 1 quarter. And it relates, whatever class you're taking will relate to the area of the world that you're in. So that's what I did when I was at UChicago. I studied Western Mediterranean civilizations in Barcelona. It was really cool for me. I'd only ever been outside of the country once before. I'd only been to Mexico once. So it was really, really cool to get to visit Europe for the first time and get to learn about, all the different places that were nearby and things like that. So that was a really cool thing that I got to do. There are also, though, major-specific programs as well that will go abroad for a quarter. So, for example, there is a neuroscience-specific program in Paris that I've heard really great things about. 2 people in our office actually did that program, so I've heard from both of them that they really enjoyed it when they did that. And then we do have opportunities as well if you want to go abroad for a little bit longer than a quarter, to go abroad for a whole semester. So we have relationships with some different universities throughout the world, where you can go and spend a whole semester directly enrolled in their program and have the credits transfer back to UChicago. So as an example, Oxford is one place where you would be able to do that. So yeah, I think that is a really good quick overview of academics at UChicago. Just as a reminder, I will move on to talk about advising, career stuff, student life, application, all of that. But I'll go ahead and just pause for a minute here and just see if anybody has any questions. All right. Let's see. It looks like we've got a question about, can we study abroad for an entire year? Yeah, you can study abroad for an entire year. Kind of how I was mentioning that those semester programs, there is an option to do that for a whole year. So I actually did know a person that ended up, I think she went abroad to London for an entire year and she really enjoyed it. And so yeah, that definitely is an option. So yeah, great question. All right. Let's see. Looks like we have a question from, how is the workload with a double major? Yeah, it's a great question. So I didn't find it to be all that difficult, especially because, I had those extra elective credits. So yeah, it was just, I just took the 3 or 4 classes per quarter that people do. 3 classes is considered a full-time student. 4 is kind of the max limit. You can take 5, but you have to kind of get special permission for that. But I never had to take any extra classes, never had to take stuff during the summers or anything like that. So yeah, it was a really great experience for me. I'd actually started out only wanting to minor, but then it just ended up being so easy to major that I was like, why not just do the major? So yeah, great question. All right, I'll go ahead and maybe take 1 or 2 more. So it looks like we have a question, what engineering options are offered? Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a program in molecular engineering. So that is the program that we offer. It's out of our Pritzker School of Molecular Engineering. It's actually one of our newer programs. It's I think one of the only ones in the I think we're one of the only universities in the country to offer a program in molecular engineering. So it's one of our particularly more exciting, I think, majors. I have a few people who majored in it. And so, yeah, great question. All right, let's see. All right, I'll go ahead and take one more question, and we'll go ahead and move on. So it looks like we have a question. Are you required to take humanities, arts, and social science if you really want to major in science and math? Yes. So regardless of what you major in, you are going to be required to take all of the classes that I mentioned as part of the course. So just something to keep in mind if you're considering UChicago. But I think a lot of people, even if they do end up majoring in those classes, do enjoy having the core just because it kind of gives them a chance to stretch their legs a little bit beyond, their interests, but they still get to major in what they're interested in. So I think it's helpful in that way. All right, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. And just a reminder, if we don't get to your question by the end, we'll do our best to get to all of them. But if we don't answer them, please do feel free to email us when this is done, and someone from our office will be more than happy to get back to you and answer any last questions you have. But to go ahead and move on, hopefully everything I talked about just made sense, but if you feel like your head is spinning like that Mr. Krabs meme, I know that's a really old meme, but it's one of my favorites, so I'm still going to use it. But if you feel like Mr. Krabs in that meme where everything is kind of spinning around, don't worry. There are a lot of people at UChicago to help you navigate everything that I was just talking about. And I would say that the core of that is going to be our college advising system. So every student is assigned a specific academic advisor. That is their only job. They do not work in our office. They don't teach. They don't do anything else. Their sole job is just to be there for students, to advise students. Every student is assigned this academic advisor before they even step foot on campus. So about summer before your first year is when you're put in touch with them. During that first year, they'll help you plan out your classes for your first quarter, help you sign up. You're required to meet with them every quarter throughout that first year just so they can check up on you, make sure you're adjusting well. Most people, it'll be the first time they're living away from home. And then they can also help with things that are not necessarily academic related, like I've heard of them helping students from warmer climates find a good winter coat for Chicago, because that's obviously going to be, very important part of living somewhere that can get a little bit colder in the winter. But on top of them, they're not the only advisors that we have. Each student is also assigned a specific departmental advisor from within their major. So you'll typically declare your major at the end of your second, beginning of your third year. There are some exceptions to this, but generally speaking, that is when you'll be required to declare a major. And at that time, you'll be assigned a specific departmental advisor. So they're around to just have a little bit more specific knowledge about your area of study. If you do end up double majoring, you will have more than one, which is great. And they can, advise you on different classes, things like that. And then what they can also do is help you find, if you're interested in research, they're probably going to be a great person to talk to about that as well. I'll talk a little bit more about how you can get involved in research on the career advising side of things in a second, but academic advisors, specifically departmental advisors, can also be a really good resource for this. At UChicago, research is really, really popular. About 80% of our students participate in research in some capacity, and we often say we have more research positions open than we actually have undergraduate students to fill them. So if that's something you're interested in, it's definitely very doable at UChicago, and that's going to be whether it's on campus with different professors, or we do have relationships with different organizations where you can get involved. So just a couple examples, Argonne National Lab, Fermi Lab, Marine Biological Laboratory in Boston. These are all different places where students are able to do different research opportunities. But like I said, we do definitely have a lot of advising as well on the career side of things. So every student, kind of like with your academic advisor, every student is also assigned a specific career advisor. And so this person is a great person to talk to about opportunities during undergrad. So again, you can talk to your academic advisor about research, but also your career advisor will know of different ways that you can get involved with that. Different internships, different, all kinds of different job-related things while you're in undergrad. But then they can also help you start thinking about what you might want to do after you graduate. And then they can also help you navigate all of the different things that we have going on in career advancement, because there's a lot. And so they will be able to direct you towards things that might be particularly helpful for you. So I'll just mention kind of three key things that come out of career advancement that most, if not all, students take advantage of at some point. So the first thing is going to be our Metcalf internship program. So if we were doing this in person, I would say, parents, who among you wants your student to have, a job after they graduate? And hopefully you'd all raise your hands, and I'd be like, all right, leave them up. And I'd be like, students, how many of you want to have a job after you graduate? And hopefully all your hands will go up. So I'm going to imagine that all of you at home right now have your hands raised in the air. And one of the ways that we help with that, we help people, I see you're doing it in the virtual way. That's awesome. Thank you. One of the ways in which we, help students with that is through our Metcalf internship program. So, if you want to do something later on, it's helpful to have experience while you're in undergrad. But unfortunately, a lot of times internships are unpaid, or interns kind of do the grunt work. They're not really getting to do kind of the more, substantive stuff. They may just be going to get coffee for people or making copies, and we really don't want that to be the case. We really want our students to get as much as they can out of these internships. So a couple different ways that we kind of help with that is one, all Metcalf internships come with All Metcalf internships come with a guaranteed stipend from the university so that you are paid for your work. We also make sure that they're substantive so that you're actually getting to learn about whatever it is that you're interested in. You're actually, developing those skills and, getting a chance to see if you even like it as well. Because that's something that internships are useful for as well, as like to see, do I really like working in whatever this industry is? And the great thing too about Metcalfs is that they are offered in all different kinds of areas. So we have them at tech companies, we have them in the finance sector, we have them at legal nonprofits, we have them in healthcare. You name it, we probably have a Metcalf in it. And then Metcalfs are also offered not only in Chicago, but also outside of Chicago and even outside of the U.S. So if you want to stay in Chicago for a summer, you definitely can. There's also some Metcalfs during the year. So if you want to work and do an internship during the year, that's a possibility. However, if you want to travel during your summer, maybe see somewhere that you haven't been before, you can use a Metcalf to do that. Or if you want to be closer to home for the summer, or if your parents want you to be closer to home for the summer, you can probably find something that is a little bit closer to home if you want to. But moving on from there, second thing out of career advancement that is pretty cool is our TREC program. So TRECs are trips to different businesses and industries to get a little bit of a better idea about how they work. So some of them are just day-long things. They might take place in Chicago. There's obviously a lot going on in Chicago. Some might be a week-long. So as an example, we have a TREC for students interested in journalism, arts, and media. One version, they'll go to LA for a week. And they'll visit Disney as part of that trip, and then the other version goes to London. They visit the BBC. And so TRECs are just a really good way to kind of go and observe what it might look like to work at particular companies. And a lot of students use them in kind of a kill two birds with one stone type of way. And they might set up an interview with a specific company while they're on a TREC there so that they can maybe secure a position for the summer or something like that. So TRECs are a really awesome way to kind of get involved as well. And then the last thing that I'll mention that comes out of career advancement that is really helpful is our UCI program. So that stands for UChicago Careers In, and we have a bunch of different ones. They're listed up on the screen there. But one thing that I think is helpful to know about us, and one way in which, again, we're a little bit different, is that we don't offer pre-professional majors like pre-med or pre-law like a lot of other places. Instead, we have these UCI programs. So how this works, and I'll use our healthcare one as an example. Let's say that you want to be a doctor. You can major in whatever you want, but then you'd go and you'd meet with the advisors in UChicago Careers and Health Professions. They would advise you on the different classes that you need to be taking to be competitive for med school. They could connect you with internships and research while you're an undergrad. Then when it comes time to apply, they can read over application materials. They can help you practice for interviews. They can connect you to MCAT resources, all that kind of stuff. And so the reason we have things set up this way is just so that the career side of things and the academic side of things are a little bit more in conversation with each other. And all of these different UCIs will work in similar ways. So, for example, I have a friend right now. Oh, and one thing I should have mentioned as well is that you do have access to all these resources even after you graduate. So I have a friend right now who is applying to law school. She took, some gap years. But is applying to law school right now, so she's able to go and meet with UChicago Careers in Law, and they're able to read over all of her stuff and kind of help her prepare for all of those kinds of things. So UChicago Careers our UChicago Careers in program is just a really helpful way to kind of get some more specific advising if you're interested in going into business or education or any of the other things listed up here. All right, so again, I think that is a good quick overview of this time advising and career stuff. So I will go ahead and pause again and go ahead and just take a look and see what questions people have. All right, so it looks like we have a question from before about the core, so I'll go ahead and answer that because the core, like I said, is a pretty important part of UChicago. So I guess my favorite part about the core is just that I really enjoy learning. Like, I kind of miss school sometimes. And so even though I knew I wasn't going to go into, like, let's say social sciences, I really enjoyed just taking the class to just learn more about different things. And, some of my favorite conversations from UChicago come from, like, that core social science class I took. Self-Culture and Society was the name of the class. But I learned a lot, and that class I actually took my first year, so that's like way back in my memory, but it still really stands out to me. So that was one of my favorite classes, but just as a whole, just the opportunity to learn about different things was really great. So yeah, great question. All right, let's see. So someone's asking, what would be a good major for someone who wants to have a career in business? So yeah, that's a really good question. So like I said, we don't have a business major, but there are a couple different options. So I would say most, if not all, students who want to go into business will take advantage of UChicago Careers in Business Program. That's open to everyone. All of these are open to everyone, but some of these UCI programs do have specific programs within them that are a little bit more selective. So within UChicago Careers in Business, there's something called the TROP Business Program that you can apply to. So it gives you a little bit more specific advising. There's opportunities to take classes at our Booth School of Business, things like that. So that's one way. And then another way that a lot of people who want to go into business kind of take advantage of UChicago is within our economics major, we have a couple different tracks. And we do have a track that is specifically for business economics. So a lot of people who are interested in going into business will choose to major in economics and then just go on that particular business economics track. So yeah, great question. All right, so let's see. I will go ahead and answer one more. All right, so it looks like we have a question about how many credits do you need for each course? So yeah, that's a great question. So it'll vary a little bit across just depending on how you set things up. So off the top of my head, I don't know the exact breakdown, but I think, for example, they're kind of, the different parts of the core are kind of grouped together in different thematic elements. So social sciences, arts, or social sciences is its own thing. You need 3 credits there. I do know that. Arts, humanities, and civilizations, those are kind of grouped together. And between all of those, I think it's 9 credits altogether. And then in a similar way, social, physical sciences, biological sciences, and math are kind of looped together. And between those, you need a certain amount of credits. So there's not like one particular number for each of them. Just all together, they need to add up, and you can kind of mix and match how you want. If you look it up online, and if you Google like UChicago degree worksheet, it actually breaks it down and kind of shows you different ways that you can do that. So if you want to Google that, you can kind of play around with it a little bit and see what you might want to do. All right, great. So I'm going to go ahead and keep moving on. So next, we'll go ahead and talk about student life, because hopefully when you're thinking about college, you're not just thinking about career and career stuff and academics. Hopefully you are. It is definitely very, very important. But hopefully we're also thinking about how you are going to have fun, how you're going to engage with your community, because that's super, super important. And, we don't want you to be, in your room by yourself 24/7. That wouldn't be a very fun way to get through college. So we have a bunch of different things going on. This is the one part for Viva that is hardest to talk about, because there's just so much. That I only ever feel like I'm kind of, scraping the surface, but I'll do my best to just give you some key highlights. But just keep in mind that just because I don't mention something when I'm talking about this doesn't mean we don't have it. So definitely feel free to do your own research, look into what we have, or if you're wondering if we do have something that I don't mention, definitely feel free to reach out to get more information. But to go ahead and dive into it, at UChicago, I would say that the core of student life is going to be our housing system. So we have several different residence halls throughout campus, and each of them is divided up, though, into smaller sections called houses. And your housemates really do become kind of like your family while you're on campus. So obviously you're living together. Each house, though, does have a house table in one of the dining halls. You don't have to eat there, but the idea is just that you never have to be eating alone if you don't want to. So it's really nice that you kind of already have, a built-in friend group, especially when you're brand new and you don't really know where to sit or anything like that. You just go and sit at your house table and you can get to know people there, which is really awesome. And then houses all have a lounge area, which includes kind of like a living room type area with like a couch, maybe TV, something like that, and then a kitchen area. And so a few times a week, all houses will have something called study break, which is where everyone will head in the lounge. Someone will typically have signed up to make food, and everybody will just take a break from studying, relax, talk to each other, things like that. Some houses have different traditions for what they like to do. So I know, for example, one house, they watch The Bachelor every week when it's on, and they kind of make fun of it. That's not the only thing people do. So, if you're someone who would never be caught dead watching The Bachelor, or if you're someone who likes to watch The Bachelor seriously, there's other things that houses do. For example, I remember one of my first study breaks, we all had pizza and we watched the movie When Harry Met Sally, which, fun fact, is another movie that features the Chicago campus. So that's another one you can watch to see Chicago in action. But there's definitely a lot of different things that houses will do for study breaks. And like I said, it's a really great way to get to know different people in your house and to kind of have that built-in friend group. But other than that, we definitely have a lot of other things going on at UChicago as well. We have sports at 3 different levels. So we have them at varsity, club, and intramural. Varsity is going to be the most time-intensive. Compete at a high level, things like that. I was on the varsity swim team when I was at UChicago, and it was a really fun experience. But it definitely is a time commitment. The good thing, though, is that at UChicago, we're a Division III school, so for us, we do put a lot more emphasis on the student part of student athlete. So, it can be a really good fit if you're somebody who really wants to keep doing athletics, but, wants to really prioritize your academics. And then we also have intramural sports, which is kind of, the least time intensive. Intramural sports are typically just once a week. They're really supposed to be for fun. So we have more kind of normal sports like basketball or soccer, but then we do have some more goofier sports. One of my personal favorites is inner tube water polo. It's exactly what it sounds like. You have to stay balanced in one of those round inner tubes while you're playing water polo. And it is really funny to watch because even though it's against the rules, people will just knock each other over and people will flail around and fall out. So if you ever get the chance to play or even just to watch, would definitely recommend it. And then kind of in the middle in terms of time commitment between varsity and intramural is going to be club sports. So those are a great fit for people who, still want to compete, still even may want to travel and do things like that, but maybe don't want quite the time commitment of varsity athletics. So there's kind of, no matter what your level is, you've got some different options there. But sports may not be your thing at all, and that is 100% okay. We have over 450 different student organizations on campus to choose from to get involved with. Some of them are listed up here. If you want to look into all the different ones, you can go to Google UChicago Blueprint, and that website has all of the different student organizations that we have listed. One of my particular favorites is the Zombie Readiness Task Force. So they host an event twice a year called Humans vs. Zombies. It's basically a very elaborate game of tag. So you can sign up. Everybody gets a bandana. If you're a zombie, you wear it around your forehead. If you're still a person, a human, you wear it around your arm. And there are safe spaces on campus. You can't just burst into someone's dorm room or into their classroom and tag them out. But it is pretty funny because you'll be walking around and you'll see people with bandanas around their heads, hiding behind a bush, waiting to jump out at their friend when they come out of class. So that is one of I guess the more unique traditions that we have at UChicago. The reason why I like to highlight that club in particular is because the reason why we do have something like that is because it is very easy to start your own club. So if there's something we don't have that you're really interested in or passionate about, you could be the person to bring that to UChicago. So everything I've been talking about is kind of things that take place on campus, but there's definitely a lot to do off campus as well. Chicago's a huge city. There's a ton of stuff going on. I still have not gotten a chance to do everything that I quite want to do yet, and I've been here for a while. But, just a few different highlights. Obviously won't be able to get into everything, but we really want people to be able to get out and to explore. So we have a few different things in place. One of those is something called a U-Pass. So it's a card that you get. It's included as part of our student life fees. And it gives you unlimited rides on public transportation in Chicago during the school year. And the public transportation in Chicago is really great. I'm not from somewhere that has a super expensive public transportation system. So it was really crazy to me that you can pretty much get anywhere that you're wanting to go by using that. So that's really awesome. Another thing that we have in place is something called Arts Pass. So this is just your student ID, but it will give you free or reduced access to various different arts-related locations throughout Chicago so that you can kind of, explore. One of my favorite places to go to that you can use the Arts Pass for is the Art Institute of Chicago. So I've been there both for classes and then also on my own, and it's a really cool place to visit. So, if you ever get the chance to, when you're able to, it's a really cool place to visit. And then the last thing that I'll talk about kind of relating to getting out into the city is that houses oftentimes go on excursions together. So you might go to see a Cubs game or a Second City performance. And if you do go with your house, the university will typically subsidize things like that so that you're not paying full price. Because, Cubs tickets can get pretty pricey, but, we try to help out a little bit so that it's not as expensive as it might be if you were just coming as a normal tourist. So yeah, again, like I said, student life is the hardest to get into just because there's so many different things that you can do. But I'll go ahead and pause for questions again. And if you do have a question about maybe something that I didn't mention, go ahead and throw that in there. So let me take a look. So it looks like the only question we have right now is, we've got some more coming in. So, all right, let's see. So let's see. What are the food options on campus, and do you get a student discount in surrounding restaurants and cafes? Yeah, it's a really good question. So we have several different dining halls on campus. We have 4 different dining halls on campus. During your first year, everybody's required to have our unlimited meal plan, so you have unlimited access to those. Later on, you can kind of choose to get something a little bit more reduced, or if you end up moving off later on, you're required to be on campus your first 2 years. But if you do move off, there are plans for if you live in an apartment, things like that. You also have something called Marine Dollars. So different local restaurants have food on campus. There's different cafes. There are small mini marts on campus where you can use those Marine Dollars. So depending on your plan, you might have $100 to $200 Marine per quarter. And then, a lot of restaurants around campus do have discounts for students. So, that's something you should always definitely check on. So, yeah, great question. I'll go ahead and take a couple more. So I see one about why did I choose UChicago. I'm going to go ahead and save that till the end. So I'll answer that one, but I'm going to wait till the end for that one. That's a good one, though. So let's see. What are some of your favorite UChicago traditions? Yeah, so like I mentioned, that zombie, I never did it. I was just kind of content to sit back and watch it happen. But the zombie readiness task force, I think, was a really fun one. I think one that's really nice is during orientation week, every year the new class, there's we have an address in our Rockefeller Chapel. It's this huge, really pretty building on campus, and then after that, everybody walks out and through the quad, and there are people's housemates standing and cheering, and parents are there, and people are kind of just, so it's just a really nice way to welcome all the new students to campus. So that's a really nice one that I like as well. All right, I'll go ahead and answer one more question, and then I'll go ahead and move on. So let's see. So how popular are fraternities and sororities? So yeah, I get this question a lot. So yeah, we have both fraternities and sororities on campus. I don't know the exact number of students that are involved in them, but definitely a good number of students are. We do have some fraternity houses on campus. We don't have sorority houses on campus, but both are really involved. There's different, mixers during the year and formals and different volunteering events and networking events and things like that. It probably is a little bit more low-key than maybe some bigger state schools and stuff. So I went to my last 3 years of high school in Texas, and so some of my friends went to schools in Texas. Fraternities and sororities are huge, so maybe it's not that big, but we definitely have different fraternities and sororities here going on, and different events that you can do and things like that. So yeah, great question. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of move on to the last bit of this, which is talking about the application process. So I think before I dive into each individual piece of the application, I will just go ahead and kind of give you an idea of how we look at applications as a whole. So we look at applications both holistically and in context. So what that means is we look at every single piece of information that you send us, we look at it all together, we look at it in conversation with each other. We also keep context in mind, so that means both the context of your particular school, because different schools, even if they're in the same city, can be very, very different, and then your own personal context, because you are living a life that no one else is living, and it's really important to us to keep that in mind. And then obviously this year, COVID is going to be a huge part of that context. We know that different schools are addressing COVID in different ways. Some are remote, some are in person, some have gone past fail, some haven't. And so we are, really willing to work with whatever your particular school is choosing to do. And even if you're not someone who's applying this year, if you do apply in future years, we are going to know, that 2020 was a weird year. And so when we're looking at your transcripts and your activities and all of that from that year, if things look a little bit different, we're going to understand why that is, and we're going to be really understanding of that. So hopefully, you're not stressing too much about how COVID will affect how we look at applications. But if you were, hopefully that can kind of help provide a little bit of comfort there. So with that kind of in mind, I'll go ahead and jump into the individual pieces of the application. So the first thing is going to be the application itself. We accept both the common and the coalition application. We don't have a preference between the two. You can use whichever one works best for you. These applications allow you to apply to multiple different schools at the same time, so that you're not filling out information like, your name and your birthday and all that kind of stuff multiple times. It just kind of helps streamline the process a little bit. Us and many other schools, though, will have a supplemental section, which includes things that we specifically want you to answer. So we have essays as part of our supplemental section, and I will get to what those are in a little bit when I talk about essays as a whole. So not skipping over that, I'll just keep it in the back of your mind. We will talk about essays. But next thing that we are going to take a look at is going to be your transcript. So in general, we just want to see that you are challenging yourself and that you are generally being successful. We are not looking for perfection. We admit people all the time, who have these on their transcript. I was one of them. And we're not expecting that you're necessarily, maxing out everything. Like, for example, my school had Calculus AB and Calculus BC. I was in AB, and I was in, different classes. So, in general, we just want to see that you're challenging yourself and being successful. Like I said, we're not looking for perfection there. And again, we're going to keep context in mind, of course, when we're looking at your transcript. From there, we require 2 letters of recommendation from teachers in core academic subjects. So with this, I recommend try to ask a teacher that knows you well. I know that, if you go to a bigger school, that might be a little bit harder to do, but just do your best. Like I said before, context is key. So if you do go to a bigger school, we're going to realize that you might have a little bit more, limited options and things like that. But just try as much as you can to pick a teacher that knows you well. Also, this is huge. Make sure you write your teachers thank you notes if they do this for you. Chances are, if you're asking them to do this, other people are asking them as well. So you just want to show them that you appreciate the time that they're taking for you. And in addition to those 2 required letters, we do allow everybody to submit 1 additional letter if they'd like, and that can be from anybody. So it could be from another teacher, but it could also be from a coach or maybe a manager at work, or just anybody else that you think could speak to to who you are as a person. I want to emphasize, though, that letter is not required. It is just an option that's available to you. We admit people all the time with only 2 letters. It's just there if you want it. Next, we are going to look at your activities. So this is actually included as part of the application, but I like to talk about it on its own because we do tend to get a lot of questions about that. But there is no secret formula to getting into UChicago with these extracurricular activities. There's no tuba plus soccer equals UChicago. We just want to see that you are not going home and binge watching 10 hours of Netflix every single night. We just want to see that you're hopefully doing other things with your time, getting involved. So maybe that's clubs and sports at school. Maybe you volunteer. Maybe you have a part-time job. Also, though, maybe you have to help take care of your younger siblings every day after school, and you're not able to do clubs and sports because of that. You can definitely list that. I have had people list big sister on their application because they do spend a lot of time caring for their younger siblings. You can definitely do that. And especially now too, with COVID, people are having to get a little bit more creative with how they spend their time. So, I've had people list I'm self-learning German on Duolingo. That's something great to list. So yeah, just don't be afraid to list things that might not be school sponsored. You can definitely branch a little bit outside of that if you're doing other things. To move on from there, next thing that we're going to look at is testing. So we accept both the SAT and the ACT. We will super score both. So if you don't know what that means, if you take either one of these tests multiple times, we will take your best score from each subsection across all of your attempts and add it up to get one big super score. You're also more than welcome to send in things like AP tests, IB tests, SAT subject tests, anything extra like that you can definitely send in. However, we are a test optional school. We've been test optional since 2018. I think we're really grateful this year that we've had that in place for a while now. So if you don't have test scores, you don't have to send them in. You don't need to worry about it. Or if you do have them, but you maybe feel like these don't really represent the type of student that I am in the classroom, then you don't have to send them in. So it's entirely up to you whether you send in testing or not, and we're happy to look at your application either way. But moving on from there, next bit of the application is going to be essays. So we have 3 different essays that we look at. One is called the personal statement. So this particular essay is part of the Common or Coalition application. It goes out to all the different schools that you apply to. And this one is going to be the most general of them. But because it's a personal essay, you're going to want to make sure that we learn something about you by reading it. There's not a whole lot of times in your life where you can kind of just be completely self-absorbed and self-focused without people kind of looking at you a little bit weird. But this is one time where you have complete permission to just really focus on yourself. So definitely take advantage of it. We get a lot of really nice essays about people's moms or grandmas and how they inspired them and stuff. And that's great. You can definitely talk about that, but it should always come back to you. So I should want to admit you after I read your essay, not your mom or whoever else. Next essay that we look at is going to be our UChicago essay. So these next 2 essays that I'm going to talk about, these are part of our supplement part of the application that's unique to us. So one of them is our UChicago essay. A lot of schools do have an essay like this asking, why do you want to go to our school? So for this essay, just try to be very specific. We just want to get a sense that you're excited about us, that you know us well, and you all are already off to a great start. You're here today, you're learning about us, so you should already hopefully have some things to talk about with that essay. And then the last essay that we look at, this one is my personal favorite. It's called our extended essay, also known as our uncommon essay, and the prompts for this one are a little bit more unique. So just some past prompt examples have been find X, where's Waldo really? If there's a finite amount of matter in the universe, how can restaurants like Olive Garden truly offer unlimited breadsticks? So with this one, we're just trying to get a sense of how you think. We're trying to give you the opportunity to think outside the box a little bit. And so my biggest pieces of advice here are just answer the question. I know that sounds really, really simple, but as an English major, I can tell you, just answering the question is a huge part of it. And then the second thing is have fun. This essay is meant to be a little bit more fun. We have 5 new prompts every year. You can pick any past prompt or you can make up your own prompt. So just really find a prompt that speaks to you and just run with it and have fun. And then the last thing that I do want to mention, just last couple things, if you are an international student, we do require English language proficiency. However, if you've been at a school where English is the primary language of instruction for 2 years or more, you don't have to send those in. And then if you are applying as a first-year student, we will ask later on in the year once they're available for your mid-year grade. So just a couple things to keep in mind. And then we do also let you submit additional materials as well. None of these are required. These are just options if you want them, but if you have something like an art portfolio or a research abstract, or if you want to record a video profile or something like that, all of those are things that you can send in as well. But I want to emphasize, things like art portfolios, research, video profiles, all of that is an option, but it's not required. It's just available if you want. So once you've, kind of completed all of those application materials, you're going to have to submit your application, and we have 4 different ways that you can do that. So we have early action and early decision 1. The deadlines for those for this year have already passed, but they're typically in early November, and then we have early decision 2 and regular decision. If you are a senior this year and you're still thinking about applying to UChicago, you definitely have time to. But basically the difference between these, early decision 1 and 2 are binding, meaning that if you're accepted, you are committing to coming to UChicago. So it's a binding agreement. Early action and regular decision, though, are non-binding, meaning that even if you're accepted, we're really hoping you're going to come. If we admit you, it means we're really excited about you, but you do have some flexibility to kind of weigh your options and decide where you want to go. All right, and then that brings me to my last bit, which is going to be about financial aid. So like I said, if we admit you to Chicago, we're really, really excited about you. We really want you to be able to come, and we never want money to be the reason why you can't. So that means a couple different things. So first of all, we waive our application fee for anybody who intends to apply for need-based aid, and that's automatic. As long as you indicate that you intend to apply for aid on your application, we'll waive that fee. From there, you'll send in various documents to our financial aid office, so that'll include one called the FAFSA and then either the CSS profile, or we have our own worksheet that's free that you can use instead, whichever one works best for you. And then your tax information from the prior year. So if you're applying to Chicago this year, that would be for 2019. We use that information to come up with what's called your expected family contribution. That's the amount of money your family is expected to pay. And then we meet the difference between that and the full cost of attendance in a combination of grants and work studies. So we don't have any loan expectation as part of our financial aid packages. You can take outside loans if you want to, but we just don't have a loan expectation. And then in addition to that, all students are automatically considered for merit scholarships. These are going to be smaller amounts, not meant to cover the full cost. The reason for that is because our need-based aid is so comprehensive, but the great thing is you don't have to do anything extra. Everyone is automatically considered. All right, so that is UChicago in about an hour. So hopefully you learned something new today. These are just some online resources for you. I will skip to the next page in a second that has some additional information. But before we go, I'll just answer a couple last questions. I know someone was asking about the swim team at UChicago. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. I actually started as a walk-on, and then I ended up getting to go to a national meet, which was really, really cool. A lot of my really great friends that I'm still in touch with are part of the swim team. So yeah, and if you want to email me later, my information is on the website, and you want to ask questions about swimming, definitely feel free to. And then the last question that I'll answer, because I know it was asked earlier, is just what is my favorite part about UChicago. And my favorite part about UChicago is just how much everybody really loves to learn. So people have really different interests. They're interested in a lot of different things. But I think everybody's just really excited to be in school, really excited for the opportunity. And so, there are a lot of conversations that happen in class that kind of extend beyond the classroom and you talk about later. And so that was one of my favorite things about that. But swim team is definitely very high up there too. But all right, so I think we are going to have to wrap up. Like I said, if we didn't get to your question, it's not because it's not a good question or because we didn't want to answer it. Just please feel free to email us. The email address is up here on the slide. We do have a lot of other things coming up as well that you can kind of check out. But thank you so much for coming today. I hope you all have, a safe and healthy holiday season, and best of luck to those of you who are applying to college this year, whether it's us or another school. Yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.